Hey, what's up? Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Anik Singal. Hopefully I got your name somewhat right. We talked about this before we got started.
You got it. You nailed it.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited.
Thank you. I've been following your stuff for a long time. You have a lot of things going on. So how do you describe yourself to people?
That's a great question.
Or like, what's your 2-second bio for
Oh,
business?
God. I'm insane. I would say aspiring entrepreneur, creator with a lot of ideas. And I say aspiring because I've done well as an entrepreneur, but I think there's a lot more left for me to learn and do. So I'm still aspiring. But I don't know, man. I hit 40 this year or last year. And I totally think I'm having a midlife crisis because I'm like, who am I? What am I? Why am I? I was very driven by money before, and I'm not now. It's weird if you feel lost because I'm not, and money's not what drives me. What does? It's actually like kind of creation in a way. So I was telling my friend, and I was like talking about this on the podcast I filmed earlier today. I said, this is the first time in 21 years that I've become so product focused. So I'm like obsessing about making a great product, which is a cool feeling. So yeah, aspiring entrepreneur, creator, insane, crazy.
Yeah.
You've
done a lot. You've done a lot. I think you have like a learning mindset. So it's a generous way to describe yourself. But let's get into some of that. I want to talk about your businesses. I want to talk about some new stuff you're doing. But before we do that, you're someone who has had a lot of experience selling digital products, information products, courses, doing marketing for those types of things. And our audience and myself are pretty beginner level at that. And it's something a lot of people want to go into. So the Newsletter Operator podcast, our average listeners probably has, 1,000 to 10,000 free newsletter subscribers. They're building an audience online. They want to build that into a business, but they're probably not monetized at a level where they can quit their full-time job and go and do that. So there's a couple monetization paths you can explore with email list. You know all these, of course, but I think digital products is the path many people should go down. And so I'd love to kind of ask you some questions and almost like take that avatar that I just described and kind of play around with that like a case study and talk about how we could help that person.
Sure.
So if someone's just looking to sell their first digital product or whatever we want to call it, any just advice off the bat or high level recommendations you would have, things that they should think about if they're that type of person, that avatar that I described?
Yeah. First advice is, what kind of digital product do you want to sell? And how do you want to sell it? That's going to dictate so much of what you do and whether it brings you joy or not. I'll give you an example. I was just before we got onto this, I'm hosting a retreat coming up in, I think it's like 6-7 weeks. And so I actually just started letting people enroll in it. And that's not a digital product per se, but it's one of the tools in the chest of information marketing, I would say. And I just had a customer email me, and they're throwing objections at me, right? Oh, what about this? And and can we get on the phone and talk about this? And I just don't want to. To be honest, it's like, no, I don't want to. Like, I don't want to talk on the phone, and I don't want to address objections. My response to them was like, with all due respect, based on the questions you're asking, I'm happy to answer them, but actually based on the types of questions, like, this is not the right retreat for you. And that's the truth, right? So why did I just use that story? I just, what are you selling and how do you sell it is so relevant, right? So do you want to do high ticket, low ticket, mid ticket, right? If you do very low ticket, like if you come out with a $10, $15, $20 product, that's great. What's the big vision there? Because it's not going to make you much money. So if you have a 3,000 person email list, you're not going to get 10% of them to buy. It's just not how it works. It's not that many people take action. You have a 3,000 person email list. You might have an active clicker database of 300, right? At any given time. You probably get like 30, 40, 50 sales, maybe 30 sales per mailing. Maybe you pop together, you can get 100 sales if you do a good pre-launch. That's still not much money. So low tickets almost always require a back end. And so then what's your back end? Is it a $1,000 offer, $2,000 offer? If that's the case, are you willing to do webinars? Are you interested in doing webinars? Webinars can build a tremendous amount of wealth, as they did for me, but they're also the so word I'm looking for, barrier to entry on that is a little bit higher. It takes a little bit more time. You got to perfect a few more skills, learn a few additional technologies, or do you want to go for the super ticket where you offer the coaching, the consulting, a mastermind, a retreat, access to you, which you can sell for $5, $7, $8, $9, $10, $12, $15, $20,000. How I started, now this is not for everybody, but this was right for me. I was in college and I fell into it. It was not strategic at all. I started by selling consulting with me to do something. So there was a software, it was a black hat SEO software. I learned how to use it really well. People started asking me questions. Someone one day was like, can I just pay you $500 to do this for me? And I'm like, it takes me 2 hours. I'm a broke college kid trying to figure out how to make money online. This person's offering me $250 an hour. This is 20 years ago. I was like, yeah. And then next thing I know, I'm getting so many gigs that I was burned out and I didn't want to do anymore. And I was making a lot of money, but like school, this, that. So I went into my first digital product, which was like I screen recorded myself doing it all and I burned it on DVDs. Now I had literally a production line in my college apartment of my friends with computers just burning DVDs and packing boxes and the USPS guy coming and shipping. So if you can tell, it kind of worked backwards. And that's still till this day my advice, right? Is in information marketing, especially today more than ever before, it's competitive, cost of advertising is high. There's a lot of options out there. So it takes depth to make money. So you need layers of offers. You need a back end and all of that, or you need just the back end, right? So it's like you just have a $5,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 thing, and that's it. So if that's the case, and if that's where you're going, start with that. Work backwards through your funnel, and that's actually going to serve you the best. So when you have smaller audiences, I always say it's much, much easier to sell the higher price stuff. And this is counterintuitive to what most people think. Most people that have smaller audiences lack the self-confidence or they have the limiting belief, and they tend to go with the lower ticket. It's actually the weirdest thing. It's the other way around, because when you have a smaller audience, you have the most intimate relationship with that audience you'll ever have. You will not retain that level of intimacy when there are 10,000, 100,000, 300,000. So, and plus 2 sales at $10,000 a pop is 20 grand. Your head will explode trying to get to 20 grand selling $20 products, right? Yeah. You will have to sell 1,000 of them, which you cannot do with a smaller audience. So a lot of times the solution is that, but then there's a lot of people that are uncomfortable with that, right? So I sold my first offer, which was consulting, at a price that didn't really require me having to talk to them on the phone or sell them or do any kind of nifty song and dance. So you do the same. Right? Like right now for me with the retreats, I've found a certain price that makes it worth my time. It's fun and it's just high enough to kind of filter out people. But I refuse to talk to people on the phone. That's my no-go. Like we'll talk via DMs and email. So as I've grown, I can tell you my happiness at any given point in my business for the last 20 years was directly related to whether I was doing stuff through the day that I enjoyed. And I'm becoming more obsessive about that lately. Yeah. Like I really am. I am starting to get to the point where if I don't enjoy it or look forward to it, I'm just not going to do it. I don't care how much money it makes.
Let's circle back to that first offer. So let's scratch digital product away for a second and like come back to that. Like developing that first offer. You kind of talked about the strategy of having it lower priced at first, where it's kind of a no-brainer sell. You don't have to get on the phone. And then I imagine over time, as you know your value and you get more demand, that price could go higher for this first offer. Would you agree with that, or what do you think about
it's supply and demand. It's economics. Yeah, 100%.
What do you think? I mean, you gave a great example, and I think a lot of people can do something along those lines. But for someone with a small audience, what do you think that is? And obviously it depends on the niche, but like what types of things are you seeing, or would you do if you were starting again? Are you seeing work for these types of like first coaching, consulting, service type offers?
Yeah. So guys, and so change in terminology. So for me in my world and ecosystem, a digital product, I use the term info product rather than digital product. So in my world, consulting and coaching is an info product. So sometimes I use the two interchangeably. So you might ask me about digital and I'll talk about coaching consulting. My first offer, there's a lot of lessons to be learned that sometimes I need to remind myself as well. Here's one of the things that we do, and I do this all the time. I have done this 3 to 4 times in the last 2 years alone. And guess what, Matt? Every single time it has failed. Every time, 100% of the time. And that is we try to force an offer. So we try to put a round peg in a square hole or whatever that term's called. Actually, that would work. Trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And let me give an example of that. So we become so convinced that we're onto something or that we have this offer. And then we just start trying to shove it down the audience's throat without taking a second to see if the audience want it. Some of the best businesses, if not most of the best businesses, and I'm talking even outside the digital product space, big companies, they started accidentally. They started with a product focus. And so what happens is here's my story, and this is a prime example. So I didn't have an audience, by the way, when I first made my money. Kudos to everyone here who's learning from you, Matt, to build an audience. It's the number one thing I now teach. For anyone who says, hey, how do I start to make some money online? I don't care if they're doing e-com, digital, it doesn't matter. Build a audience, period. It's a business basic lesson. It should be in business school. Build an audience. So I didn't have that, but I used to sit on a forum. There used to be a chat board. It wasn't even really a forum. Discussion board, I should say. And I loved it. And I would be there for hours a day. And I would ask questions and answer questions, mostly ask questions. So what happened is I bought this software, this Black Hat SEO software, and I used it a few times. And I was making a little bit of AdSense money. Like I figured it out. I'm not technical at all, so it's shocking that I figured it out. I knew the founder of the software. He taught me a little bit on my own, like on private. And so people were asking questions on the forum, and I would answer. I felt proud that I could finally give back to this community, so I would answer the questions. And then the next thing I knew, people started asking more questions and tagging me versus even the founder of the software, because I was way faster. I was around more and the founder's busy, and I would go answer stuff just for free, just to help. Until one day someone said, can I pay you for this, right? But even before that, actually, what really happened, the story, that was not a full, complete story. So what really happened is I was helping people so much with it, I was getting the same questions again and again. So here's what I did. I put together what I call an FAQ page, which basically became a pre-sales page. Okay, if anyone learns in the affiliate world, a pre-sales page is basically a page where you kind of like edify the thing and then click over to the affiliate offer, so you get them excited about it. Well, I built an FAQ page, and then one day before I went to bed, a marketer told me, why don't you just make an offer on this page? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, why don't you just put at the end of the page that if you buy the software through me, I'll support you. You're already supporting people anyways. I was like, that's interesting. And I did. And I made a bunch of forum posts. The signature file went with it. And so I got a burst of traffic. I woke up the next morning. This is the first time in my life I ever made over $300 while I slept. I hadn't made $300 in 12 months prior to that combined. So you could say, I was like, holy crap, I'm onto something. So now as these people started buying stuff, they're asking me questions, right? And one of the guys was just too busy. He was like, can I just pay you $500 to do this? He quoted the price. That's how the price came about. And I said, yes. And I did it. And then the next day, he's like, I have another site. Can you install it there? And he PayPal'd me $500 without even asking. That's all right. Then the third day, no joke, he's like, I have a friend who wants it. Can you do it for them? I'm like, okay. Now, by now, I've got like probably 70, 80 buyers who bought the software through me. So I sent them individually an email, man. I didn't even know I could do this autoresponder stuff, okay? I individually copy-pasted email to 70, 80 people saying, hey, I'm offering this thing. If you PayPal me $500, I'll just install it for you and you have to mess around. Went to bed. Next day, didn't even check. I went to class, come back from class. I had 10 people. I'd made $5,000, right? And so where do you see this organic momentum in your life and in your business? For me right now, sometimes it's hard for me to believe, but right now my organic momentum is what you asked about earlier. You say, hey, I want to talk about this later, which is the whole don't say that brand and the compliance stuff. which if you think about it, it's like the most boring topic ever. It's like, really? There's a market for compliance? I'm not a lawyer. But man, when I start talking about it, people are infatuated. They listen, they learn, and they ask me more questions and they want more stuff. So I'm like, whether I believe it or not, that's where the market is telling me, that's where momentum is taking me. And so we as entrepreneurs, no matter what size of entrepreneurs we are, we have a tendency to force our thoughts and opinions upon the natural momentums being offered to us by the universe. And so when you have this list, don't ask them what they want. You can, it's useless information in my opinion, okay? You got to listen to the questions they ask. You got to listen to the things they want. Get on webinars with them, do little town halls, just hang out. Don't rush to monetize. That's the other thing I tell people. Don't rush to monetize. Let it come, let it happen. And if you let it happen, I promise, it might take an extra month or two, but you'll more than make up for it. Because what I just told you may or may not be applicable to your audience. But back to your original question, I have seen types of offers I'm seeing right now. I mean, people are AI consultants. People are helping social media manage. People are writing content. They're managing email lists. They're doing lead generation and social media management. They're doing copywriting. I wouldn't really go into that right now. It's a dog-eat-dog world. And it's not a high return. Gosh, man, it's a dime a dozen services. I mean, you can...
There's a lot out there, yeah.
People want done for you right now. That's the big thing going around right now. Who did I hear? I think it was Frank. I heard someone recently say something that made me laugh. They said, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, geez, I wish I could get more coaching. Like, no one says that, right? So think about what you can do for someone in your list that you could do for them A to Z. And you're on the initial steps of creating an offer.
Yeah. And done for you is just a lot easier to sell than do it yourself. But I still want to talk about selling do it yourself because there's a lot of advantages to that too, right? Higher margins.
Oh, of course. It's where I've made most of my wealth. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about taking, like, someone has a done for you service or some type of offer like that and turning that into a do it yourself product, whether that's a course or whatever type of thing you think makes sense for that person. I'm kind of in that position myself. So for example, I've had an agency for the past year or two, and I did my first course this February. And it did well, but it was a cohort-based course. So we met our goals, and I'm hoping to make that course into a business that can be just as big as the agency. So this is one example. We don't need to use myself as a case study, but what's the first step for someone who wants to do something like that?
Yeah. So what I did, right? So I was burning out doing these installations that took me about 2 hours and got it down to like a little over 90 minutes, but still. And so I was talking about it to a friend, and this is a marketing friend, so they kind of understood, and they said to me, why don't you just record yourself doing it and sell that to people? And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, the reason people are hiring you is because they don't understand the software. They don't understand the technical documentation that comes with it. The founder hasn't done any videos. Just you install it, right? Just literally film yourself. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as screen capture videos. It had just come out. Literally, screencasts had just come out months before this suggestion. So I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. So I did. One of the clients, I asked, can I please use you as an example? And they said, yes. I just filmed the whole thing and burned it on DVDs. And I did create a workbook, which today you could do with AI. So it's crazy. But I did create like a workbook. So you'd get in the mail a workbook with a really riffy, like kit, like this case with DVDs inside of it, because it was all printed at my house in my computer. I didn't even want to go to Kinko's or anything. And so what I did, positioned it, and I just said, hey guys, instead of paying me per, I've created this, I forgot what I call it, not course per se, but I've created this, and you can do as many sites as you want now, and I still charge $500 for it. It was still the same price. And again, I printed like 10, and I basically kept them there, and I said, if I sell out all 10, then I know I'm onto something. If I don't, and I did, I sold out all 10 like in 2 hours. So you could take what you're doing, right, and film yourself and catch yourself in the experience of doing it, and you can start to turn that into a course, and it should be a pricier course. You don't need to discount it ridiculously. It should be $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, especially if you're taking something that you provide agency services for, where you know you're the expert, you're bringing together so many years and so many clients worth of knowledge. You can record yourself doing certain parts, turn that into a course. A lot of people will throw an event. So you could throw an event for your clients, even if 20 people show up, doesn't matter, because you're really doing it for the recording, and you film yourself teaching them for 2-3 days, and then that becomes your course. There's so many hacks and so many great ways to get that content filmed. But if you're an agency, it's so much easier for you because you already have your SOPs. You know what you're supposed to do. Your course outline is your SOP. It's kind of done for you.
Yeah, that's a great process. Tell me about price points. So do you really think that the minimum price point for a course in this context would be $1,000?
No, I would never want to say that, right? I don't want to say that because that's so different and varying by niche and person and personality. The world I come from, yeah, it's kind of an average price. It's like on the lower side of stuff. There are some worlds. I mean, you might have an email list about recipes and keto diet. $1,000 is insane. It's very high. So it's very driven by you, your brand, your experience, your topic, your niche. Everything impacts it. I'm just saying in a niche such as yours, where there is a tangible, monetary, trackable outcome, right? Where you're teaching someone how to build a business, essentially. You're building a business for your clients. You're building leads, you're building their newsletters, and you're helping them monetize it. That's got a high ROI, tangible ROI. It's not the same as like keto. I would beg to say that the ROI of going on keto and getting healthy is light years better than the ROI of creating a newsletter business. But that's not how we see it because it's not tangible. We will put more value on the tangible. So the more tangible your services are and your outcome is, the higher you charge.
For the frameworks or formulas that you have. I mean, what I did for my first course was $999, $1,000, right? Because that's what I've seen in the market. And I thought, I see cohort-based courses well above that. Maybe with the first one, I'll charge a little bit below average. Is there anything that you haven't? I mean, there may not be a formula for this. I'm just curious if you know something.
No formula. I think it's really dependent on what I'm trying to do. So lately, nowadays, I'm limiting how much I focus on selling the super ticket backend. So I'm really limiting how much I'm willing to sell. I don't sell coaching programs at all. I've just kind of passed that, right? So because of that, I have to be careful. I have to be careful what I'm selling on the front end. So my old model of driving sales to a webinar funnel in scale anymore because that funnel requires me to have a 7, 8, 9, 10K back end to make the numbers work on paid traffic. So if I'm taking paid traffic, bringing them to a webinar registration, taking them to the webinar, watch my webinar, buy, typically I won't be profitable. I wait for the back end. Now, there's someone watching this right now saying, ooh, I get double my money back or triple my money back on webinar funnels. I don't know what he's talking about. I'm talking about scale, my friends. I'm talking about spending $1 million a month in paid ads level of scale. Your front end will not be like fully self-liquidating. You'll need something behind it. So when it comes to pricing right now in my business, I'm more about low tickets for when I go to paid ads because I will liquidate most of my ad spend through the funnel, come back and put them into either my recurring continuity, sell them into one of my infrequent retreats, or maybe have a couple programs that are a few $100. I've done that as on purpose, as a choice, because that's not my main business anymore. And I'm trying to kind of lifestyle that business and then move to really focusing on building another business. And most of my team and staff are moving to the new business. So pricing is a byproduct of what exactly you're trying to do with it, right? So when I was trying to scale, when we were 2022, we were going to do 40 million in selling information products. Our focus was drive traffic from ad to webinar, sell them into a $1,000 to $2,000 offer, and then have a back end for it. We didn't really focus a lot on low tickets. We were probably going to, but we didn't focus a lot because our goal was scale revenue, grow big, potentially sell the company. So there's so many factors. I'm sorry, I know it's not a complete answer, but
it's good to
usually I do
factors.
it's just so many factors. I like to understand what the heck someone's doing, what their goal is. Is it lifestyle? Is it, some long-term thing, short-term thing? And from that, we can kind of figure out what the pricing is. Plus, it also depends on what your competitors are charging. What's the industry norm? $999 in our space or $997 in our space, Matt, is like super common, right? So it's one less variable to shock the industry with. So I like to go with the norm until I've established my brand and my product and my sales. Then I try to like maybe go up or down.
Makes sense. Let's talk about marketing and selling these types of products. So just imagine it's a course that's around that price point, like the type of stuff that you sold as your front. I don't know if you call that a front end offer, but your primary offer on the webinar, right? What type of, and we can break down the webinar funnel. I think that would be really fascinating. But what type of marketing tactics work to sell these things? And it would be good to talk a little bit outside of the webinar funnel too, because I don't know if that's the best place to start for someone who's brand new to this, but it might be. That could be a wrong way to think about it.
Yeah, a webinar could be the right place for people to start. If you ask me my honest experience, having worked with so many people, it's not. And for a few reasons. Webinars require a multitude of skill sets. And I find most people just don't have the patience level or the confidence and the time allotment to make that happen. So you could take a low ticket funnel live in a matter of weeks, and it's a lot less skill sets needed. And people don't need to be profitable, but they need to see proof. It's really weird. Someone can spend $100, make back $50, and be ecstatic compared to the person who has spent $100 and made nothing. Makes common sense, but it's that proof of concept, right? So a low ticket is something you can get up rather quickly. You could throw up a page, you could throw up a button, you could set this stuff up on ClickFunnels or on Go High Level or on Kajabi or anything very quickly. You don't need tech skills. Write some copy for which you can use templates or AI, and you could create the whole product using AI. I mean, you could literally go up and running in a week. Webinars are just not going to be like that. There's new tech to be played with. There's presentations to be created. There's a lot more sales psychology. It's a more higher priced product, which means you have to deliver a higher priced product, which means you have to create the higher priced product. So to your point, I agree with you. I don't think for the most part, even right now, as I'm getting ready to launch my new brand, with the compliance training, we're doing it with a book. We're not doing it with anything other. We'll have a webinar soon, but we're doing it with a book. So a webinar funnel, though, to your point, is probably the one thing I'll tell you I have perfected beyond anyone else in the industry by sheer force of nature. I mean, we spent probably close to $25 to $30 million promoting webinars over the last so many years. And when you spend that kind of money, you fine tune everything as much as you can. We also scaled it. We had over probably close to 1 million registrations of webinars come through. So we track, we watch, we know what's going on. Here, I'll give you the biggest changes, the biggest things that we saw that make an impact in a webinar funnel. Number one is the offer. I know it sounds mundane. I'll get to some of the sexy webinar funnel stuff, but I can't without just saying this, guys. A great offer sells itself. Requires a crappy copy can sell a great offer, but great copy cannot sell a crappy offer. And so it all begins with the offer. The offer is the anchor of your business, the foundation of your business. So webinars more than ever, because you're going to spend a lot more time talking about the offer. You're going to have so an offer is great. It has to be great. The webinar itself, of course, has to be great. But in the actual funnel, what you see most people do is they do the webinar live, then they do a few replays, then they do closeout. We changed all of this because we were finding that whatever we got on the webinar, replays was like very minuscule response. No one really watches. Most people don't watch replays. Okay, I know of maybe a couple of companies that do well with replays. I don't even it's useless to me. It's might as well not put them out. So what we did is instead of doing that, we did webinar live to encore. So that means the next day we call it an encore. We don't call it a live, and we play back the same video file through the webinar system but they have to be there. They have to log in. We have their attention. We usually get about 50% of the people to come in. So if I had 1,000 registrations, of which 400 of them showed up to the live, if it's evergreen, I'm going to get another 100 to 200 to watch the evergreen, the encore. That's huge. Okay, it's way more than you're going to get from replays. Then we do replays, mostly only because it's one of the most frustrating aspects of being a webinar marketer is the thing that is demanded the most, which are replays, is watched the least. And so it always just makes me laugh. And that's why I told you, a lot of times I don't really do customer surveys because I haven't actually found the responses to be that helpful or even that honest. You have to be very creative in how you ask questions, and you can have honesty. But they want the replays the most, they watch them the least. But anyways, we do a few days of replays, then we do a couple of days of closeout. Okay, that's fine. We saw an increase in sales from that. It's a good funnel. But one of the things that we noticed when we were doing our evergreen webinar funnels is by the end of that 6-7 days, we looked at everything. And even with the encore included, 50-55% of the people had actually engaged with the information. So almost half of the people that we paid a lot of money to get into our system who raised their hands and said, yeah, I'm interested to get into our system, like half of them hadn't even yet heard my voice open the webinar. Well, gosh, that's a lot of money we're leaving on the table. So we decided to do this thing called an extension, where what we did is we just kept going. Oh, and we also noticed that as we were closing out the promo and closing everything out and ending it, we still had 30-35% open rates on the emails. Found that intriguing. So they're still watching, they're still reading, they're still interested. Why are we shutting up when we still have half the audience that hasn't actually engaged yet? So we just kept going. And the way we kept going was we simply decided to break the webinar into 3 videos. So you'll laugh at how we did this. All right, when I filmed the webinar, I filmed it on camera like I am right now with a TV behind me and a computer in front of me. So I filmed it. So we had the screen recording from the laptop, and we had the recording of me and like on the camera. When we promote the webinar, we only show the screen part of it. We never show me on it's just a screen recording and they watch the webinar. But when we split it up and did the 3 videos, we showed it with me on screen. So it looked different, felt different. But all we did was split the webinar into 3 videos. The story was video 1, the content was video 2, and the pitch was video 3. And what we did is we pitched each part of it for 2-3 days. So now we get 2-3 days on video 1, 2-3 days on video 2, 2-3 days on video 3. The key, though, is when you land on the video page, all videos are active. So you can skip ahead even on day 1 and watch the rest of the videos. You know, I found it fascinating how many people will just end up watching the whole webinar, but split into 3 videos. And now we've extended our funnel by like 7, 8, 9 more days. We doubled the length of our funnel by breaking it up. And now what we're doing is we're making it possible for people that are perhaps not ready to log into a webinar system and commit 2 hours to watch it. They're ready to watch these videos. So by extending the funnel by double, what we saw was a 30% increase in sales. That's huge, guys. If you're spending money on paid traffic, it's astronomical. It's the difference maker. It got to the point actually where my traffic team, my media team, would not launch campaigns until my publishing team had finished building what they call the extension. So then we looked at the list and the open rates at the end of the extension, which has now been 2 weeks since they came and opted in. They're still at 20+%, 25, sometimes 30. Geez. So we extended it again. And now we use like a summit, town hall, anything, honestly, a challenge. And now by the time we got to the second extension, which would usually be another week, so now we're talking 3 weeks into that promo. And we like to do these more for evergreens and not quite live stuff that we're doing to our list, but we saw a 10% increase in sale. So between extension 1 and 2, we saw a 40% increase in sales. After that, it was a law of diminishing returns. Extending it a third time was unnecessary. The results weren't quite there. You're better off like moving on to something different. So, and then the only other thing I want to talk about with the webinar funnel that's really important to understand, guys, is you have to learn to segment your audience. And these are the 4 segments that we do. So as soon as your first webinar runs, you got to talk 4 chains. There's 4 legs, and you talk to them differently. There's the fully attended, partially attended, not attended, and the buyers. The buyers is just for exclusion. It's just so you can exclude them from any of the other emails. Fully attended is so that you can take them straight to the order page, give them a replay link. You're not going to make someone like that come back for an encore. It's annoying. Give them the replay link and push them to, now you get to push them with messaging, objections, proof, case studies, things that get them over the edge to buy. The partially attended, you push a replay. They're not ready to go to the order page, but don't put them back in an encore. They'll leave. Give them a replay and let them know that they can go ahead and scroll to wherever they left off. And then the no-shows, I don't want to give them a replay. I want to put them in an encore, then give them a replay. And then the buyers, I suppress. So that uplifted our sales yet again because we personalized the journey and the messaging, which is common sense, but I can tell you of all the webinar marketers I've seen, hundreds I've seen, maybe 3 or 4 do it. I'm not even joking. Maybe 3 or 4. So it's a big it's a big competitive advantage when you do all of these little tweaks.
Couple follow-up questions on that. What was your webinar tech stack for both for the webinar and for emails too? Any other things you're using?
So I'll tell you what it was, and I'll tell you what it is. What it was during the bulk of our massive sales when we were doing all this was Stealth Seminar and Drip. Mostly because Stealth Seminar doesn't integrate with Sendlane. There's no API integration. And so what we would do is we would integrate with Drip. It integrated with Drip. We would run the actual automated emails from Drip. And then once it was done, we had a Zapier or Zap set up to import it over to Sendlane. So we did our daily mailings from Sendlane. And just for, full disclosure, I'm a big Sendlane fan and use Sendlane only because I was also a co-founder of Sendlane. So I sold my shares out of it in 2021. But so for me, it's all, and my best friend still runs the company. So obviously I'm always promoting Sendlane. My tech stack was mostly, that was it. I mean, that's what we used. Today, if I'm running a live webinar, without a doubt, it's Event. That's the software we use to run our webinars. And it'll tie in with Sendlane directly. So
just Event. That's the name of the company.
Event. So AEVENT. It's a really cool webinar platform. It can do things that no other webinar platforms can do. It's more expensive. It's more enterprise grade, but you can automate Zooms. I mean, you can turn a Zoom account into an evergreen webinar, which is super cool. But it's got really neat features for live webinars. It's got some of the most engaging ways to communicate. I think there's 11 different ways that you can communicate with so you can send text messages, you can send animated GIFs, you can do all kinds of automations, you can do ringless voicemails, obviously emails. It does auto segmenting. So you know how I talked about after a live webinar is over, you got to have the fully attended, partially attended, not attended, and buyers. It actually does all that for you. So it automates it. So it goes into Zoom, figures out who did what, and puts them into the right audiences and kicks off the right automations. It's a really powerful software. Definitely not usually the one that people go to first when they're just getting started with webinars, but as you start to grow them, that's the one you want.
Awesome. 2 more questions. So when you do the encore, this is tactical, but is the headlines like encore, is it the same as the usual webinar headline, or is it a little bit different?
It's the same, just says encore, not live. That's all.
Awesome. And is the first one, is that live, or do you ever do those automated, or is the first one always a live webinar?
I like to do it live because you get a better recording. There's more energy. The audience is there. And at this point now, I'll always do it live if I say I'm live, simply because of compliance. So, things like saying something is live, but it not being live gets brought up. It was brought up in my case. Wasn't the central issue, but it was mentioned. And so if that's the case, I mean, if you think about it at its core, it is deceptive. I get it. It's misleading. A lot of us think it's a white mistake. Like it's a white thing. It doesn't really hurt anyone, or what do you call it? A white lie.
Yeah.
Right. But that's not how the authorities or the regulators work. So a lie is a lie. So at this point, if I say I'm going to be live, I do it live. And if I know I'm going to use a live recording for my evergreen, I'm very strategic not to call out names and not to say like, oh, so-and-so's here. So a little bit different. So nowadays, mostly what I'm doing is I'm separating the two. So if I do a live, I do a live. And if I need something for the evergreen, I just record it separately so that I can make sure I'm not, using any kind of name mentions and all that.
Yeah, got it. And let's see here. I want to get into shift topics a little bit. But one final question I have on that is, when you do the first live, do you ever get people do you ever do multiple lives to give people multiple time and dates to attend, or is it always just one live and they can use the other options if they need to see it again or see it get the first one?
I have such a funny story here. My record for the most webinars in one day is 7. And this was crazy, man. I could not do this today. Okay, I was a younger me, crazy back then. My business model, and when I say back then, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, we stopped doing it in 2016. So up until 2016, my business model was purely driven by affiliates. It was launch based. So I would do 2 launches a year, and during the rest of the year, I was basically supporting other people's launches, and then they would support mine. It was total circle jerk. It was a horrible business model, but it made good money. But it was stressful. So when I'm doing a launch, it's do or die. That's going to feed the team and everything for 6 months. So you can't mess up. And so I would do a lot of custom webinars. I was really blessed to have great relationships and lots of affiliates. Well, they all want certain days and times. So I'm not kidding. I've been on 2 webinars at the same time. It was too funny. I pre-recorded the main part, not the pitch. And I had these 2 webinars that started an hour apart. So what happened is the video is playing back here. It's pitch time here. So I'm pitching here. And then as that pitch is ending, the pitch is starting over here. And I'm like swapping over to do the pitch again. So, I have done webinars in multiple time zones for sure. I don't like it now. You couldn't pay me enough to do 2 of the same webinars in a day. I just wouldn't do it. So at this point, when I do live webinars, it's one time. That's when it is. The rest of it is encore driven or replays.
Any resources that you've found helpful to sort of writing the webinar content and creating the slides? That's really the meat of this, and that's what a lot of people struggle with. It's like an hour presentation.
Yeah.
How do I do it?
Well, so I've actually got a course it's not up right now, but it's called Webinar Mastery, which it's my entire template. It's everything. We're actually bringing it back up. And it's a $67 course. It's not expensive at all. But it's my entire formula. The other resource I'll give you that's really good is Russell Brunson's. He's got a $7 script. It's called The Perfect Webinar. So you can look up, I think the website is even theperfectwebinar.com. His formula for webinars and mine is very similar. I mean, it's very, very similar. And he gives you the slides, everything. There's a lot of people that have used his and done very well with it. And then another good book to read would be Jason Fladlien. He has a book called One to Many. Jason Fladlien's another one of the OGs in the webinar market. And I would say with Jason, I don't, and I know Jason really well. We're friends. And so I say this with all due respect. I'm not knocking him. I wouldn't say his specialty is writing webinars. His specialty is the psychology behind them. So he creates killer offers and he pitches really strongly. So it's his delivery of the webinar. I mean, I've seen him times where the slide was irrelevant. He's doing his own thing because he sees that that's what the audience needs. So his objection handling at the end and all that is immaculate. So I think you've got the perfect webinar script from Russell Brunson tied together with the presentation style of Jason Fladlien from his book, One to Many. And those are 2 really, really good resources. And then once mine is up, that's a good resource as well.
Yeah, I will buy your course because I use the perfect webinar script. I need to utilize it more, honestly. That was very helpful. So and I think this stuff is like, one webinar can generate so much. It's worth investing in and just getting
absolutely
the template from you. It's
my best webinar has generated over 30 million at this point in sales.
Wow.
And every year I would just pray that it die. I was done. I'm tired of talking about this thing. I'm tired of selling it. I'm tired of teaching it. And every year it get better and better and better. So a great webinar can do huge things in someone's life. Huge.
Totally. And I think a lot of people who are kind of new to information marketing, they don't use this tactic, their strategy, I should say.
It's intimidating. I mean, there's a lot involved. There's a lot involved from a tech side, from a creation of the PowerPoint, the course, and then also you gotta present it. You gotta present your voice, your face, and you gotta present with passion. I'll tell you right now, man, I completely undervalued the power of being a good presenter. There have been webinars that I have, my main company, right, originally was a publishing company, so we would publish experts. And so I would hop on as like the keynote, but then we had the expert really doing the webinar, and then they would pitch their program. And I mean, I have been on somewhere the host, we did a rehearsal, and the host was so dry and so bad. It was like, no, I would go in and just do their webinar for them on their behalf. So the way you present is equally important to the words that you say. And so there's some like presentation skills that need to be learned as well.
Yeah, and I think if people are intimidated by some of that technical stuff, you could just do a Zoom webinar, just try it out, and then once you get that going, then add the additional stuff onto that.
Zoom and GoToWebinar are two platforms that are easy to figure out to go do a live one and do all the other stuff, nifty stuff later. All the things I talked about, segmentation and encores and replays, and forget it, man. Get 50 people on a webinar and just do one, and like break the mold, and you'll see the power. Yeah.
But that marketing automation stuff is still very valuable. But if you're doing this for the very first time, that's maybe a later thing. Let's change subject a little bit and talk about your new podcast, new book, new business. Tell us how did that come? Tell us the brief story about how you decided to start this. We don't need to. We could talk about that for 30 minutes, but briefly about that, and then what you're doing to help people, and then I want to talk about some high level advice for people.
Sure. All right. So the short of it is this. Look, guys, I've been around in the space for 21 years. I've been in the space of teaching people how to build businesses, marketing for 21 years. I started in college. I've always known since day one that I was in a heavily regulated space that was not in favor with regulators like the FTC or even state AGs. And for the longest time, the message you're given by attorneys that are the FTC attorneys is that keep complaints down, refund people when they need it, be good by your customers, and if you're not hurting people or hurting customers, there's no reason a regulator comes by. So I took that to heart, and I built quite the KPI-driven mechanisms in my company, and as we scaled, I really solidified them. We had 3 customer support teams working 8 hour support shifts, so it's 24/7 customer support all year round, holidays, weekends, 36-minute average response time, A rating at the BBB. The last year, 2021, we did 23,000 transactions. We had exactly 22 BBB complaints, all resolved, all done. Never sued by our customers, never one legal notice by a customer, vendor, nobody. A rating at BBB, Trustpilot was good. Everything was good. Everyone in the industry loved me. I have done good by people, and I'm good. Except for in May of 2022, just a month after my first daughter is born, my first child, and I'm just back from paternity leave, I get a beautiful love letter in the mail from the government, from the FTC, saying, we'd like to get to know you better. And you never want to get to know anyone in the government better. So it was a CID. Oh my God, it's a civil investigative demand. It was essentially 10 times worse than a colonoscopy, but for a business. People ask me, what is it like to go through an investigation with the FTC? And I say, imagine where hell goes when hell has been bad. That is where I was for about 2 years, all right, 18 months. And ironically, not because of the FTC. They're actually incredibly professional. They're cordial. They give you extensions. They were fine. We disagreed on stuff and they wouldn't listen to our side. But beyond that, they were cordial, but it's just a total mental crapshoot. You wake up every day, you don't know what's happening. I had a moment where there was a Crown Victoria parked outside my office, and I was walking in, and it's tinted windows, and it still had that little thing that cop cars have on the side. And I'm calling my wife and calling my lawyer. I'm like, that's it. The FBI's here. They're taking me in. And my lawyer's like, no, dude, that's not how this works. You're fine. You're good. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you, they're there. They're watching me. Tell my wife, I'm like, hey, call the attorney if you don't hear from me. And I'm freaking out, man. It was the maintenance guy of the building. Picked himself up a nice $5,000 Crown Victoria at the auction the week before, was driving around and hanging out. I'm like, the mind starts to play tricks on you. But as I went through this whole investigation, and I had so mind you, I also had a paralegal work for me full time way before this FTC thing happened. I had an attorney. I had probably paid over $1 million in fees over 15 years. Now, some things that they picked on me on, I said, okay, duly noted. Shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have said that. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean anything bad by it, and I don't think I hurt anybody. But I hear you. That breaks the rules. But then other things, I was like, come on, right? Like the things that they really got me on, I never knew, even though everything I had been through and everything I'd learned. So about early into my case and halfway through, up until halfway to the case, I met another attorney. That's the one I co-authored this book by. His name is Greg Christiansen. And this guy, that's just what he does. He's a compliance attorney. I mean, he's an FTC encyclopedia. It's all he's done. He's a boutique firm, really nice guy, awesome guy. So he starts helping with my case. We settle. And at the end, during some time in the middle of the case, I realized one thing. I said, if I am learning things right now that I did not know after being a forefront leader in this industry for 20 plus years, then imagine how much other people do not know. And there is no one else better fit or situated to turn their mess into their message than me right now. So I started note-taking, started learning, started putting the ideas together for this book, for the podcast. And the biggest thing is also, Matt, is like, I'm really all about turning lemons into lemonade. And for me, the thing that happened was my legal bills were getting insane because at this point, every email, every social media post, every sales call, every offer, every sales page, everything had to go through my attorney while I was under investigation to make sure I wasn't saying anything that was, going to get upset them. But my legal bills were 20, 30 grand a month. And that wasn't even reviewing everything. So that was right around the craze of AI started. And I'm like, hey, how can I use AI to like help me here to drop these expenses? So I built a tool to help me, not to replace an attorney. I would never recommend that, but to help. And the word got out. People started asking. So now we're developing a full-blown SaaS to help people do that. And it's become a far, far bigger project. I mean, it's a behemoth of a project now. I'm super excited about it, but that's what we're doing. So I got a whole suite now. We have a certification program coming out. We have a compliance marketing, like how to actually do marketing compliantly. We have an entire academy coming out. We have a book coming out. We have an audit service. So if anyone's doing $500,000 a year or more and would like for us to audit their, we have an assessment, free assessment to see, where are you in, like, how bad is it or how good is it? And then we do an audit as well. So we built we built the National Association of Advertising Compliance. You haven't heard about it yet. We're not out there yet marketing, but it's the NAOAC, National Association of Advertising Compliance. It's become, gosh, man, I'm going to tell you, Matt, it's a weird passion. But when you're up at 1 a.m. and can't sleep because you're reading a case, the recent case they just released, it's weird. But it also tells you it's a calling. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think I've been listening to some of the podcast episodes, and if I would recommend people check out the YouTube channel. Don't Say That. I think that's the name, right? And there's a great video that explains your story on there too. We don't have a lot of time to there's so much to talk about. Can you give us to wrap up on this? What are 2 to 3 things people shouldn't do or common mistakes that they make when they're marketing?
Let me give you some of the ones that are the biggest ones. If you're doing a sales call, this is what I got in trouble for. My whole case came down to one thing, and it's going to shock you. No one knows this. It's not out there. There's no writing about it. 4 words. What is your goal? Now, if you're an agency, it's different, okay? Because you're doing stuff. You actually have typical results you can share. I'm talking about a coach. You're selling coaching. What is your goal? We had our salespeople would say, what's your goal? What happens is the other person says, I want to make $10,000 a month. And then the salesperson says, cool, we can help you with that. Implied earnings claim, okay? So be careful. It's called goal setting. There's no documentation anywhere online about goal setting, but Greg has been in the FTC offices and talked to the leadership. Okay, that's not number one by any means. That's just very particular, unique thing that happened in my case. I wanted to share that. Here's the main thing they're looking for: use of testimonials and endorsements. Everyone's doing it wrong. Everyone. Most people I see in violation. Here's why. 4 rules if you want to use someone's testimonial. Number 1, signed affidavit and release. They have to allow you to use their name and likeness. You know how we take those screenshots of Facebook groups and people saying nice things about us and we post them in our presentations? That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. They could sue you at any point and they have a ground to stand on. They could take a portion of your revenue because you're using their likeness. Doesn't matter that it was in a public Facebook group. You're not allowed to use marketing. Number 2, substantiation. So here you go. I made $1,000 thanks to your advice. Well, so far, if you're not using that, it's my claim. So it's my problem. The minute you use it in your marketing, it's your claim. You have to ask me to substantiate that I actually did that. No one ever does that. That's a requirement. All claims and absolute statements must have substantiation. But fine, some people get that too. Number 3, this is where everyone falls apart. Typicality. So I made so-and-so client, Kyle, made $1,000 using my training. Great. A, did you substantiate that? B, is that the typical result of your typical customer? Nobody has the studies to back that up. And 4, you have to have a disclosure or disclaimer within proximity to wherever you say what you say, not just at the beginning of your presentation, at the end, it needs to be spread throughout. So testimonial endorsement usage is one of their key areas right now. They're very focused on. The third thing I'll tell you is that due to some Supreme Court decisions that took place in 2021, which thank God for me because it really helped my case, they pivoted and changed how they do these cases. So right now, if you are doing recurring billing or if you're doing telesales, you're at the highest risk. It means one-to-one sales, Zoom, in-person, telephone, one-to-one's being analyzed the most. And the last thing I would say is anything you say, substantiate it. It became a 9-day issue in my case because I said I was voted top 3 entrepreneur by Business Week magazine under 25. This was 15 years ago. Business Week got bought out by Bloomberg, and Bloomberg went and nuked everything that Business Week had. They deleted all the pages. I couldn't find I wasn't lying, but I couldn't find the proof. And it became a thing. Something as simple as that. So whatever you're saying, if there is an absolute specific statement, it has to be substantiated. So at the very highest of levels, those are the things. There's tons more. You are not allowed to have a no refund policy. That's actually against the law. In very few situations are you actually allowed to say no refund policy. Most people don't know that. It opens you up to major class action as well and state regulators. But yeah, there's a bunch of things, man. But those are like the thing right now that they're looking for the most. That's where you're seeing most of the cases going. Yeah,
that's very helpful. I think it's a good place to wrap it up. Where can people learn more about that? And then also tell us just where people can find you online, like the number one place they should go to learn more about what you're doing or how you can help.
Yeah, man. Thanks. All right. So if you'd like to check out what we're doing, go to don'tsaythat.com. So this book isn't out yet. It's on its final rounds of editing. I was actually just working on it before this podcast. But it'll be out soon. You can get on the early alert list. Our podcast is there. You'll find links over to our YouTube channel. So Don't Say That is where you get our content. Me personally, I'd say I'm the most active on Facebook, which I know you're very active on X, and I try, but I'm kind of old school. So I'm still mostly on Facebook. I have a Facebook group. You can see my group. I'm very active in the group, so I'll respond to people all the time. And it's free. So you can join the group by going to expertscale.com. That's expertscale.com. And that's where we talk about the fun stuff, not the compliance stuff.
Yeah, I just joined the group before this call. So I'll see you in there. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me. See ya.
Thank you.